Welcome everyone to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies at Simon Fraser University on our Burnaby campus on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples. I'm really excited to have with us today noted Greek director Tassos Boulmetis, with whom we will have a conversation on a number of issues, for that matter, that range from film, obviously, but also more broadly, hopefully, on questions of memory, on imagining Greekness and various forms of Greekness, and trying to sort all these questions through the medium of film, which is your specialty. Before we begin with the discussion, I would like to point out that we're able to have Tasso with us because of the generous support of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation to both Simon Fraser University and UCLA, who together work to bring scholars, academics, artists, creators from Greece to the West Coast to expose our communities, both lay and academic, to Greece's current intellectual production. And without further ado, welcome, Tasso.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm also honored to be here. And on my behalf, I have to thank also the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for giving me the opportunity to show my work to the students of Simon Fraser University and the Greek community here in Vancouver. So I appreciate your hospitality and you and your colleagues, of course, that they worked so much in order to have me here.
So now, many of our listeners will know you and your work, but why don't we start, nevertheless, with some background? Tell us a bit about yourself, starting from the beginning. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Because it does become part of your professional trajectory as well.
Okay. Well, for those of them that they know my work or part of my work, I was born in Constantinople, which is today's Istanbul. I lived there until I was 7 years old, and because of political conflicts by that time between Greece and Turkey, my family was forced to leave Turkey and move to Greece, as it happened to other 15,000 families as well. So a total of 45,000 people, they had to be moved. They were expelled by the deep Turkish state by that time. Well, I grew up, the rest of my years, I grew up in Athens, in a beautiful suburb of Athens. And I had my studies in Greece. I studied physics in the University of Athens, and then I always wanted to become a filmmaker. So after I finished my studies, I went to UCLA and I studied film there. So,
you mentioned, of course, Constantinople, Istanbul in situating your journey and your path. What is that city for you? What does it mean? I know it's a big question. So,
well,
in a way, the city is also a protagonist in A Touch of Spice, Πολιτική Κουζίνα, your very, very popular and gorgeous film. So how does it exist in your mind and thought?
Well, in terms to explain what is my feelings about that city, I have to tell you how did Politica Cucina was conceived. And, you know, I came from Istanbul as a 7-year-old boy. There was a trauma because of that displacement. it was very sudden and very violent, at least emotionally. So, although I was speaking fluent Turkish, in 1 week I forgot speaking the language. So, it took me 30 years to go back to the city again. Although by that time I had been almost in the most places in the planet, in all surrounding continents, I haven't been to Istanbul, which was only 15 minutes away by plane from Athens. And I was, if I recollect correctly, I was 39, 40 years old. I was in a professional crisis and middle-age crisis. So one friend suggested to me, listen, maybe it's time to go back and find your roots. And immediately, that triggered some emotions. Immediately, next day I got the plane, and after 30 years, after 30 years I went back to the city with capital C, because as you probably know, all the people from Istanbul, especially all Greek of Istanbul, they call Constantinople Ipolis, the city with capital C. It's the ultimate city for them, for me as well. So that was the journey of my life. I would extend, if you want me, I have so many things to say, but it was that journey that triggered the idea of doing that film, which was autobiographical film, Politiki Cuisine, A Touch of Spice, searching for the mother food, searching for the mother city, going back to the roots and trying to reestablish and reorient and reset a new identity. And that was the journey of my life.
So, just to elaborate a bit on this, because this in and of itself is such an interesting story. You return after 30-something years. How does one start? Where do you go first? When you arrive in your home city, which is no longer your home city.
It's a funny story because when I left the city, when I was 7 years old, there was a fear in front how I was going to face the unknown, which was Greece by that time. Now going back to Istanbul, there was again a fear, which was more practical actually, because I was afraid that probably the Turks would get me into the Turkish army, which of course didn't happen. But it was an amazing feeling because after I landed, I did something which was interesting and stupid at the same time. I put my camera, I had a camera by that time, that I put it in the height of a 7-year-old boy because I wanted to search for all the places that I remember. Of course, by that time there weren't iPhones and GPSs, so I had to use my emotional GPS, my inner GPS, and try to find, first of all, the building that I was born, the apartment building that I spent the first 7 years of my life, my father's business, my grandfather's business, and the school that I went for the first grade in the elementary school. I'm talking about now the eastern side of Bosporus. It was, I grew up in the Asian part of Constantinople, not the western part, okay?
So Chalkidona.
Chalkidona,
Yes.
yeah. Kadikioi actually
Yes,
it's been called. Kadikioi means the village of the judges, okay? So I went there. The first feeling that I had, it was amazing, it was the smell. Immediately a 30-year-old smell came to me of these years. And when I say smell, by that time, even in all this happening in 1994, okay? By that time in Turkey, they still used carbon in order for heating. And that has a very unusual smell in the atmosphere. Of course, now they don't. So that smell immediately triggered some emotions. Through smell, it came, a whole bunch of emotions, which of course then ended up in the smell of food that I had to taste during my 3 days staying there. So, from the airport, I went to the hotel, I left my baggage there, I got the boat that connects the west and the east. I went to the Eastern Park, part of Istanbul, and in 5 minutes I had been in the church that I was baptized. Immediately, exactly across the church was my grandfather's grocery store. And actually there were some people, old people, that they were remembering my grandparent, and they were very hospitable. They started treating me with all these little goods that they were selling as well. And then I started walking, and all this time I had my camera in the height of my waist, because that was the height of a 7-year-old boy, and I wanted to have recorded the point of view that I had when I was 7 years old. I went to my school, I found the school, I decided to ring the bell, and the door opens, and I face the teacher that I had in the first grade, Mrs. Emilia Pandelara. She talks to me in Turkish, I talk to her in Greek. She asks me, "Who are you?" And I say, "I am the son of Sofia." My mother was Sofia, and they were friends together. So immediately she started crying. She recognized me. I was 39, 40 years old. She hadn't seen me since I was 7 years old. Anyhow, and then I continue all this adventure. I find where I was born. I found the first park that I was playing. And it was it was a journey of my life. And that was the time and the place that I decided to speak about that journey, to share that journey. And of course, that was the time that the idea of A Touch of Spice was born.
I think that there is a common thread from Touch of Spice to 1968, mm-hmm. that which we watched yesterday, mm-hmm. with a Vancouver audience. And one of the stories you just related, the idea that you meet the old-timers next to your grandfather's grocery store, mm-hmm. And they're generous and they remember that fondly. And you have a little moment in 1968 with a tak-tak instance where someone remembers now in Athens, an Istanbulu Greek, how their neighbors knocked on the door to warn them that the pogrom is coming, mm-hmm. this time the 55 mm-hmm. Pogrom. And it speaks to this connection between neighbors, mm-hmm. that was stronger than the division coming through governments and politics. And well, I think this is a very interesting little
absolutely. Let me make clear something. There was not, and there is no, still any problem between the two peoples of Greece and Turkey. I mean, Greeks and Turks, when they meet, they have great fun. The problem is on an upper level, probably in a deeper level, especially from the Turkish part, in the Turkish deep state, which still exists. But when my father was expelled and he had to leave in 1 week, all our Turkish neighbors, they were very supportive. They tried to find solutions in order to be able to stay in Turkey. And we have very good memories. Most of Greeks of Istanbul, they had very good and very loyal Turkish friends. So the division was political actually, and it was not social. Of course, there were exceptions to that, but our memories from our Turkish neighbors and our friends are very, very positive and very, very moving and emotional.
And for the benefit of our audience, just as a historical background, the year when your family was expelled, the problem that was faced by Greek families in Istanbul was that the Turkish state asked anyone who is not a Turkish citizen to exit the country, because many Constantinopolitan Greeks were married to Greek citizens.
Of course.
They had to face the stark choice of whether the family is split and one leaves, one stays, or whether they all leave so that they can be together. And this would be also one of the reasons why you were concerned about being taken into the Turkish army.
Of course.
Because you were originally a Turkish citizen.
Of course, because
Yes.
Whatever your nationality or your origin actually, when you were born in Turkey, you're supposed to be a Turkish citizen until you become 18 years old. So if you belong to a minority, like in Greek minority or a Jewish minority or a Armenian minority, when a male person would become 18 years old, he had to declare and to choose which nationality, citizenship would prefer. If you prefer to be Greek, in our case, then you wouldn't have to go to the Turkish army. But you had to, every 2 years, to apply for a new license of staying, of residence. So that was the deal. What actually the deep state did was it cancelled the possibility of renewal of this residency to the Greek, to the Turkish, to the citizens of Istanbul that were of Greek origin. So my father, by that time, he was 43 years old. He had just started making his first, let's say, his first investment in his business. He was into the leather business. He would produce leather goods like leather bags, suitcases, gloves, and belts and hats. So he had done his first investment in hardware, in big, hardware of that time, big scissors, how you say, big...
leather cutting equipment.
Yeah. Leather cutting and composing equipment. So immediately, it was like 2 months before he'd done this huge investment, the Turkish state declared that this doesn't belong to you anymore. That belongs to the Turkish people. It's ours. You take $100, $200 in your pocket and one suitcase, and you get away, and you have 1 week to leave.
And you land in Athens, which is not your home.
And we land in Athens, which is not our home. Okay, this is second part of the journey of my life, part 2 actually. I land in Athens, and as I told you, I have a trauma because it was a violent departure, which I never could understand until I became more conscious about the Greek-Turkish relationship. And that took place many, many years later. So I land in Athens. We go and we move to a really nice neighborhood in a suburb of Athens, which was not the usual neighborhood that most of the Greeks that came from Istanbul would stay. They would stay downtown Athens or in the seaside, in the region of Paleo Faliro. But for some reason which I never understood, all our family members went to a place called Pefki, Mangoufana, was told by that time. And full of trees, full of green. It was like a very wild landscape, beautiful landscape. And the people in the neighborhood, they were laughing at my accent. And also, the first day I went to school, in the Greek school, that was the second grade of elementary school, I felt really alone because the rest of the boys and girls knew each other because it was the second grade. And when the teacher came in, immediately all of them started shouting to the teacher, Madam, this guy is a Turk. Of course, there is nothing bad to be a Turk or to be a Greek, but by that time, coming expelled from Turkey, to call you somebody a Turk in Greece, it was an insult. Okay?
And of course, we had done it before. We did it in 22
We
when
did it.
the refugees came from Anatolia.
Now you're raising, of course. However, you're raising a big discussion, and if we want to extend that, yes, of course we did it before, and because all the people who came, all the citizens of Ionia, of Asia Minor, that they were established in those lands 2,000 years ago, and actually it was their land. They were very civilized, and they were more advanced and more, more cultured than the local Greeks in Greece. And suddenly they faced a big denial and faced rejection by the Greek society of that time. And of course that had some social consequences both for them and the Greek society as well. But they were carriers of civilization. They knew they were more in connection with the international world than Greeks were, Greeks of Greece, okay? Eladites, as we say them. Anyhow, yeah, we do that. But of course, we have to say something also, that the conflicts between Greeks and Turks have their origin back. I'm not talking about the occupation of the Greek territories by Ottomans, but of contemporary problems and issues, political issues between Greece and Turks. They go back 1908, when the Neo-Turks, the new Turks, took the power in Ottoman Empire. So it was their policy and it was their strategy to eliminate all minorities from the Ottoman Empire. First of all, Greeks, then Armenians, and Jews, of course. But see what happened to Armenians in 1915.
Yeah.
And there is always a source book, which I mention every time in all my interviews and discussions, which is called The Secrets of Bosporus, which was written by Henry Morgenthau, who by that time he was an ambassador of United States in Constantinople, in Istanbul. So that book is a reference, is a source book, which was written between 1915 and 1918. I don't remember, immediately after World War I. This book explains why the Greek-Turkish relationships are now as they are now. Okay, if you read that book, then I'm sure you have read it. The source and the reference of that book, it refers to contemporary political and social issues between the two countries.
And for our listeners, it's also important to note that there are very serious and brave Turkish scholars who have been trying for years
Absolutely.
to explore these questions.
Absolutely.
And bring light to questions of ethnic purity, cleansing.
Absolutely.
And so on the
these are issues in the Turkish society, especially the intellectual Turkish society, and as well, because they know what they did to the minorities, and they said, well, if we still had the Greeks here, Turkey would be in a much better situation, even socially or culturally, or at least more Western than it is right now, towards West.
So, you're in Athens. You are basically at the other model in modern Greece for imagining Greece. There is a Byzantine imagination that imagines Greece extending all the way to Constantinople. Basically the great idea, the Μεγάλη Ιδέα, which gets defeated in 1922. And there is the other idea of Greece, Athens, the classical past, which is basically the idea of Greece that got the international support for the creation of the modern Greek state. How does that Greeks strike the Constantinopolitan person arriving in the country?
I would say with hesitance. I remember that many Constantinopolitans were accused of being spies of Turkey, which is not, but they were very nationalists. Our neighbors, they would accept us very, very positively, but because they were immigrants as them as well. I mean, the landlady that we had in our first residence that we stayed in this suburb I was telling you before, they were from Greeks from Russia, from Pontus, okay? So they were very friendly to us. But the Greek state was very hesitant and very, how you say, epiphylaxikos, cautious towards us. But I would say that it took us some time, but finally we were adapted. We were adapted.
And you mentioned very early on that film was something to which you kind of turned as an aspiration. What was the interest with film? Was it connected to questions of memory, or was it something else?
Well, I have to tell you how the idea of filmmaking was triggered to me. There were some students in high school, one level higher than me, that they were very into film. So one day I ran into shooting with a Super 8 camera, and I saw them shooting, and for some reason I was really shocked very pleasantly, because I really liked what was happening there. I was a movie fan. I would go almost, many times I would leave the class and go and see movies during the weekdays, cheat the lessons, cheat the teachers and the professors there. And I would spend many hours in watching movies in theaters in the suburb that I was growing up. So I saw these friends, and I was really intrigued by the process of filmmaking. So they gave me some books to read, and I was 16 years old, and that was the time that I decided definitely to become a filmmaker. That was something which was registered in my deeper self, that I would become a filmmaker. So after I was about to finish high school and study, I had a debate with my family, because I wanted to study film somewhere, and by that time studying film in Greece, it was something really suspicious from the establishment and the conservative people, like my family was. So the next best thing that I really liked by that time was to physics, and I made a deal with my parents. I said, listen, I'll study physics, and then I will do whatever I want to do, which is film. They said okay, hoping that I will forget about this desire, which of course never happened. And after I got my degree, my bachelor's degree in physics, and I never worked in physics. I never made any income from working either applied science in physics or teaching physics, whatever. I was accepted at UCLA because actually during my studies in physics, I was involved in a club in the University of Athens, which was called the Theatrical Department of Athens University. It was an independent department. It wasn't a school. It was just a club for the students. So I was involved there, and then we founded there a film school, and we brought some filmmakers, young filmmakers by that time, that they had just come from France and from England. They studied, and it was, I'm just reminding you because yesterday you saw in 1968, they were in May 68 in France. So they had all these ideas about, you know, the film theory, about structuralism, feminism, psychoanalysis. So they came to Greece, and part of it was good and part of it was bad because the Greek film industry was influenced by their presence, and although it was very profitable, let's say, industry, it became very, very isolated and introvert industry, quote unquote, community. Anyhow, I was accepted at UCLA. I had made a short film. I studied with the support of Onassis Foundation there. And after I became back, I went and did my service in the army, and then I started working in the Greek industry. I made my first film, which was a science fiction film. After the end of the film, I was in debt. I was owing a lot of money, and the only way to to overcome financial difficulties is to work to advertising and commercials. So I started a career in the advertising industry, and of course that was very, it helped me a lot to organize my next film, which became that success that everybody knows, at least in Greece, the Politiki Cuisina, A Touch of Spice.
So, as part of the flow of your narration, I'm picking two things up. I'm going to return to science fiction because that's something that is of real interest to me. So I'm being selfish here as far as the audience is concerned. But I want to go into something where, as someone who doesn't do film, as someone who's a consumer of film and thinks more about film as a story and as image, I don't often think about. You said that the first time you saw this group of students with a Super 8, you were intrigued by the process and the making. So to me, it sounded as if the first thing that captures your attention, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not necessarily the final product itself, but the making, the crafting of it.
Part of it, because I didn't tell you that I was always in a creative mood since I was really young, even before adulthood. I mean, I was writing poems, I was writing essays. I was very artistic oriented. So I knew inside me that my orientation would be somewhere in the arts, okay? So after I saw that filmmaking process, well, let me tell you, I was in the narrative process, but I was very, very ignorant what narrative means and what conventional narrative means. I was trying to find my steps by retelling stories or trying to be innovative in storytelling, writing, you know, really stupid poems. I mean, I still have them, and I don't know if I should burn them or keep them. I don't know. I mean, and several other stories. But no, I was impressed by the process, but also for the possibility of telling stories with a new way, okay, with a different, more technological means, instead of writing poems or, of course, I would never go to music because I had a really bad voice. Although all my family were mandolin players, I couldn't learn, for some reason I didn't learn to play any musical instrument, but I thought that filmmaking would be the thing of my life. That would be my life, actually.
And for me, the revelation was what you just noted earlier, that your first film was science fiction.
It was a science fiction.
Is there a copy of this?
Well, there is a copy, actually. There is a copy of it. It's I can send you a link, of course, if you want, but I wouldn't make it public. Although, because of all these advancements in technology, you see, this film had something which was really innovative. It was one of the very first films. It was shot back in the 80s, late 80s, 89. It was shot on video, analog video. By that time, the format was Beta SP. So it was analog video. It was shot on video, and then it was transferred to 35mm film. That was a process that it was quite innovating by that time, because in a certain way, reduced the cost of the movie making. And under that concept, I applied to the Greek Film Center and I said, listen, I have this idea, which actually it was a very good idea, the idea of the film, the core idea of the film, The Dream Factory, that's the title of it. It was very interesting. And I applied to the Greek Film Center, and the budget that I gave was really, really low in comparison to the budgets of the other Greek films, although the other Greek films were very, very low budgeted in comparison with European films of that time, and of course with the American films. But anyhow, and of course they were very happy to finance me because they used me as an alibi. By that time, the Greek film industry, it was heavily politically managed by the political system. They would give money only to the people who were loyal to the party that it was in the government, okay? So I'm not gonna give names, but if you consider which party was in the 80s, you understand what I'm talking about. Anyhow, I was financed by the state, including the Greek television channel, the national television. We had only one channel by that time. And as I told you before, well, I finished the film. It was transferred to 35mm. It did very well as an innovative film. The theme of the film, it had to do questioning what happens if technology would violate our personal space. Well, not our private space, our psychic space. Let me tell you where this idea came from. I was really thrilled by a film by Francis Ford Coppola, which was called The Conversation. That film was produced in 1972 between the two Godfathers, and it was a film based on Watergate issue. So the film was questioning what happens if technology, advanced technology, can violate private space. If we can hide microphones and you can record my private life by hardware. So that was a very influential film for me and my generation by that time, because it was heavily political film, and also combining political, philosophical, social issues with technology, okay? And the film, the science fiction film that I did, it was, according to my beliefs of that time, it was an advancement of that. What would happen if technology can violate in our emotional space, if we could be able to understand, which actually, if hardware can interfere and violate our deeper selves, if we will manage to record our dreams through hardware, our thoughts, our points of view, our thinking, if it could be reported to a black box, to an outside equipment.
Which, of course, given the algorithms of all the social media today, that collect
exactly.
everything that
well,
you're doing.
The thing is that the answer to that question of my film, it didn't come through hardware, it came through software.
Yeah.
You see, now everybody in social media, you don't have to find a black box to do that. Yeah. You share all everybody can track your personal life from different approaches, from different angles, and see what are you thinking, what are your desires, what are your habits, what are your choices in life, what are your moral and ethical views that you have in life.
So, as you've been describing your journey and your influences, you're speaking both about narrating Greek stories, but also about being influenced by developments that are global, whether it's the teachers who come in the Metapolitevsi to Greece from abroad and bring something new, or whether it is Coppola. And in a recent conversation off camera, you mentioned, Dimitri, you need to watch Whiskey, this Uruguayan film. And your comment to me was, it is the kind of film that Greeks would be good at making and maybe should be making. What do you mean by that? What is a film that Greeks are good at making or should be making?
Well, first of all, my comment had to do with the financial possibilities for the local Greek industry.
Okay.
Very, very few films in the recent Greek history brought back the money that they were invested, either by private investors or by the state. We used to make films that almost every time we knew that the film will not make the invested money, it will not bring them back. Okay? So, it was the film I was telling you about, it belonged to the very humble categories of filmmaking. It's a very human story, very low budget film, which almost won an Oscar because it's human relationships. Let's say, I saw recently a film, which of course it was a major film produced by Hollywood, but again, the production value, if you take out the talent's cost and fees, it was really low, The Whale. Okay, it is shot only in one location, you have 4 actors, and that's it. I mean, there are certain territories that they cannot make films. They don't have to produce films that they are super ambitious about. I'm not saying not to make such films. There are films recently. I mean, there was a film about Smyrna that it was produced, which was quite success. I don't know if it made the money. I don't know, but it was a high budget film. According to the Greek standards. I personally believe that in order to have a continuity in the Greek film industry, we should make films that at least they have some besides their artistic excellence, they should have a financial success as well. I'm not talking to, at least to bring the money back, so it could have the producers refund them. In that terms, I told you about this film.
Okay.
It has to do with storytelling. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. Apologies. It has to do with humble stories, Greek stories, and of course, if you have a great story, because Greece, there are so many great stories about the past of Greece, or in the previous century, in the century before. And if you find the finance, I'm not negative on that. If somebody comes and tells me about a story and he wants to invest money targeting an international audience, I will be more than happy to do it. But as an initiator of a project as a director producer as I am right now, I would never go for something very, very ambitious unless I do know that I will have the support and that product will be exposed in an international audience.
I think this is a really interesting issue because, and you hinted at it when earlier on you spoke of becoming introverted, and which I think is also a comment about the trajectory of the Greek film industry, which was a really vibrant industry in the 50s, 60s, and then falls into somewhat of an abeyance. And currently, it seems that as a result of tax incentives and a concerted effort on the part of the Greek state, there is a lot of filming of non-Greek productions that is beginning to filter into the country. Do you see a possible change in the reality of Greek filmmaking as a result of this new kind of economies of scale?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was a long time request from the film community in Greece to offer tax incentives to the foreign producers that would come and shoot in Greece, because Greece has amazing locations. You can shoot anything you want in Greece. So there was a legislation from the previous government supporting productions that are coming from abroad, and we had a boom, a really big. The industry was blossoming in Greece the last 3-4 years. Of course, that would help also both the filmmaking industry, but also the streaming industry in Greece. I mean, the last 3-4 years, we saw in the Greek television much better and more well-conceived stories, narratives regarding. So it was very, very positive. And absolutely, it will have the film industry and the television industry for good.
In this case, is the Turkish film industry at all an example for Greece?
Absolutely. But, well, don't forget that Turkish society has 80 million consumers.
The scale is different.
Well, let me tell you, I happen to be to shoot A Touch of Spice in Turkey. That was back in 2003, okay? In a period that it was a landmark of change in the Turkish film industry. 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier from that date, the Turkish industry, it was very, very, in the beginning, it was very, I could say, very naive. There were very few Turkish filmmakers acknowledged in the international scene, okay? And the production crews, they were not very professional. And in a period of 10 years, the Turkish film industry blossomed. The strategy of the Turks were amazing because they brought foreign people. So the Turkish crews, the Turkish talents. By the way, Turks have amazing actors and actresses. They have very good education in acting, in theater, and in film. I was amazed with the quality and the performance of the Turkish actors that I had to work, and also for all these Turkish actors that I saw when I was doing casting for A Touch of Spice. So they have a big audience, 80 million people, and of course now in streaming media, there are so many Turkish productions, very, very high
and
quality.
Fully international. I have
fully international.
Latino friends who are watching Turkish telenovelas in
let me tell you,
Hispanic backgrounds.
Their policy and the strategy of the Turkish government, it was very successful on that aspect, okay? Promoting the Turkish culture.
Yeah. Which,
whatever objections we might have about...
which is a broader comment about the role governments can have in promoting the arts.
Of course, absolutely.
A critical role. So I think that I would like to basically ask a selfish question as a teacher. You do film, but you also teach film. How does teaching affect filmmaking, if at all?
First of all, by teaching, you are in contact with young, fresh minds. And this is an amazing feeling to be close to young people, to see how you think. It's a win-win situation because you give your experience and you get their freshness. And this is amazing. You get ideas. And what they do is the feedback that you get from them is they put you in the reality, because in our age, we live in our own closed reality. We don't, as long as you don't have kids. I mean, personally, I don't have kids. So, you know, the only thing I can give, whatever, my humble knowledge so far in my humble experience, the only thing I can do is, you know, to teach and offer to the youngest people, to the young people, my help, my assistance, my point of view. I'm so happy when my ex-students, they are sending me their films and saying, what do you think? What are your comments? It's an amazing feeling. So, freshness, and I get a sense of reality because they live in the real world. We live in a let's say, in a different world as older people.
Yeah, I have this feeling all the time, and I think it's not just a feeling, it's also ultimately the privilege of being able to always stay in touch with what's coming.
Absolutely.
And it is one of the most rewarding kind of elements of teaching.
Let me interrupt you, if I may. I was always, when I went to study at UCLA, I focused on technology because I happened to be in the United States in a period that we were transforming from analog to digital. I saw that happening in front of my eyes. I was one of the very first Apple IIe computer owners. I bought the first Apple IIe. Do you remember Apple IIe? Probably not. Okay. I bought the first Apple IIe in Europe. It was March 1st, 1983. And I'm still into technology. And many times I provoke my students. Actually, in some aspects of technology, I'm ahead of them. Although they should be searching all the new stuff. Of course, sometimes they show me how to do some things faster in the computer, but I'm really studying what's happening now with all these huge transformations that are taking place in Hollywood with Unreal Engine, with Epic Games, with MetaHumans, with, and of course the new trend now, the AI, which is, you know, it's the new big thing in the neighborhood.
And you are in Vancouver at a time when the film industry is in a big strike that is taking place here and in Hollywood, exactly in these questions of creative ownership, on sharing of the wealth, and on the viability of the production of film or series.
This morning I was reading an interesting article, and there was an independent producer suggesting a possible solution to the strike, suggesting to all the companies and the actors to make contracts with independent production companies in order to show to the big guys like Warner Brothers, Netflix, Amazon, blah, 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 and all these big streamers and production companies, to show that their talent is being offered to independent filmmakers, to independent companies, to make deals with them And these deals will protect their future income and residuals. And supposedly that will change the minds of the big guys. So that was a very interesting article about a possible direction that the whole strike will take. Of course, the issue of AI in the appearance of the actors and the extras and it's a huge issue, and I hope it will be a legislation on that for some reason. Maybe the problem will be solved by AI itself.
Well, let's see. I mean, we're at the university. The university itself is struggling to come to terms with all this, what it means for
of course,
academic integrity, production of knowledge. We will have to work with it.
Absolutely.
Evidently. I mean, fighting it is impossible. But it's interesting to hear about perspectives from outside the purely academic world. With that, I would really like to thank you for being with us.
I have to thank you. It's an honor for me. You gave me the opportunity to meet the academic environment of SFU, of course, with the support of Stavros Niarchos Foundation, and also to come in contact with the Vancouver Greek community, which was an amazing experience last night, and thank you so much. So you don't have to thank me. Okay.
And I would like to thank our audience for being with us. We really aim to bring our guests before you and keep a record of their visit to Vancouver so that it does not become an ephemeral thing that simply passes. A very valuable meeting, of course, with the Greek community, but something that nobody else can share. And we hope that in the coming months, as we have more guests to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies, we will be able to keep increasing numbers of records of their presence with us here on Burnaby Mountain. And once more, thank you for being here. And we'll be seeing you sometime soon.